Hi, this is David Dusek with Golfweek magazine, and this man needs no introduction. This is Rory McIlroy, and Roy, thanks very much for giving us a little bit of time. And
no problem.
Cool, and we're here to talk about your golf equipment. We'll start a little bit as it relates to the U.S. Open. Obviously, it's coming up here next week. What can you tell me as far as preparation before a major championship like the Open? Do you do any tinkering with your golf equipment? Do you change your setup, or do you go with what you've been using on the PGA Tour so far this year?
Yeah, I make that determination whenever I see the golf course, and I was up at Pinehurst earlier this week on Monday, Tuesday, and it's a long course, it's a long setup, and there's going to be a few holes where I need a 3-iron. Thinking of, a few par 4s that I might need 3-iron off the tee. The 6th hole, long par 3, which I probably need 3-iron into the green. So there's a few holes, and that's why I usually carry 4 wedges and start 4-iron. So I'm going to carry 3. There's not many wedge shots at Pinehurst either, so I'm going to put the 3-iron back in the bag. I think it's going to be an important club for me, and then go back to a 3-wedge system. So that's the only thing that I've changed for in terms of my equipment setup going into Pinehurst. Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting, because I know that a lot of people equate Pinehurst with being such a short game test, and I know you've got a new wedge in the bag, the lob wedge. You and I spoke after you won the PMW PGA Championship. How do you think the toe sweep wedge is going to sort of react, and how did it play? I mean, you've played a couple of practice rounds there now. Does it give you any kind of an advantage with that unique sole design to it, or how does it work around that?
Because Pinehurst there's not going to be any rough, and the big advantage for me I felt with the toe sweep was how it reacted in the rough. I'm not sure it's going to be in the bag next week. I'll probably, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's a great option for me, like somewhere like Wentworth or Memorial, where it's thick rough around the green, and usually a US Open setup where there is thick rough around the green, the toe sweep wedge will go right in the bag. But the way that Pinehurst is set up right now, there's so many different options and different grinds that we can choose from, that I'll go back to the grind that I was playing in my lob wedge for most of this year.
Gotcha.
So, but the toe sweep wedge worked obviously really well for me at Wentworth, where if you missed a green, you were in the rough, and if you had a gnarly lie, that club could sort of slice right through it, and you could control it a little better out of the rough, which I liked.
Will you, before a major championship like the US Open, or I would think at the Masters, put new wedges in a week or two ahead of time so you've got sharp grooves, or do you go with, again, what you've been playing with all along? Yeah,
I've just started this week breaking in a new lob wedge, just so when I get to Pinehurst, you're obviously used to playing with it and stuff, and but yeah, I think having sharp grooves for that week, especially when the greens are so firm and you need a lot of grab on your ball, I think it's really important.
Gotcha. Do you ever mess around with the bounce on those wedges and all? I mean, keep essentially the same club, but if the sand is particularly fluffy or light, maybe go with a little more bounce, or do you play around with that?
Yeah, a little bit. I think the great thing with this lob wedge is the dual sole as well. That you can, there's a couple of different bounce options as well, right, depending on whether you play it straight faced or you open the face a little bit. But I'll play around a little. I've always been a guy that preferred a low bounce wedge, something with quite a that can sort of slide through the grass, or sort of you can nip it and not have to use a lot of the bounce. So I practiced obviously Monday, Tuesday up at Pinehurst, and this wedge was working well, so gotcha. I'll keep that in the bag.
Last question, sort of related to the U.S. Open and your setup. You mentioned you're going to go with the 3-iron and such like that. You typically are a 2 fairway wood player. Have you thought about the addition potentially then of a hybrid club instead? I would think, because U.S. Open tends to have obviously very fast greens, very firm conditions, that would bring the ball in a little more vertically, maybe stop it a little quicker. Was there a thought of putting a hybrid in instead of the 3, or was the 3 in as soon as you saw the course?
Yeah, just the 3-iron was in as soon as I saw the course. Hybrids are something that I've generally stayed away from. Just I prefer more of a traditional looking club, traditional setup, and yeah, it's just hybrids are something I've never really never played too much. I used to have one, earlier on in my amateur career, but it just, I've always been comfortable hitting long irons, and I don't think I have a problem, getting some height on the long irons, so I can stop those, relatively quickly if I need to.
Cool. Roy, I appreciate your time. Thanks for
Thank
listening.
you.
Best of luck at the U.S. Open.
Thank you.
This has been David Dusek with Golfweek Magazine.